What it do, everybody? It's your boy King Crowder back again with another edition of History You May Not Know and Things That Are Not Taught in Detail to Us for Sure. Have you ever heard about the greatest slave rebellion in U.S. history that did not happen? Have you ever noticed that the one that almost happened could have changed and altered the history of slavery in this country forever? The focus point of this lesson will be about the great, iconic Denmark Vesey. Denmark Vesey was born around 1767, early in the 19th century, to a free black community in South Carolina. People do not know that he was likely born on the island of St. Thomas, where he was captured. And Vesey won the lottery and purchased his freedom at the age of 32. He was an exceptional businessman who at the time sadly could not purchase his freedom of his first wife and children out of slavery. Vesey was depressed and sad that this could not happen. He was a tradesman of carpentry and also an active minister. He worked in the Second Presby Church and led the congregation of the AME chapters. He worked closely with enslaved Africans around that time, better yet, enslaved Americans. Vesey was very influential because he was very staunch and knowledgeable of the slave revolt that took place in Haiti. 1804, the island took back its nation and won its freedom against one of the most powerful armies. Most people never knew that Vesey gained his authority because he used the spiritual tones as far as legacy in speaking to him. He could speak the dialects, French, English, and the southern codes of that nation. Vesey worked with enslaved people all around. He knew how to stay humble, meek, and plan other actions. Vesey was so intelligent that he began to self-educate himself on the census. The enslavement at that time had no idea there were more enslaved people than white Americans in the state of South Carolina. South Carolina was split in two, remember. North Carolina was split by a certain line, and South Carolina, specifically the city of Charleston, where Vesey was at, all had its own country. Vesey talked to the people around his land, and he had all the slave companions in one unison. He told them, I am going to make you earn your freedom. Legacy spread because the slave codes were enforcing and hurting people. He used the AME church to spread his legacy and talk around. He understood that he was so persuasive, and if he can get everyone on one accord, multiple things can happen. They planned this to happen. He made sure that they were all on one accord. The one area in Vesey's ways that prevented that from happening was that he had to remember enslavement took place in some of the mines, and some of his compadres went and told the other owners. The other owners at that time stopped Vesey a day before this revolt actually happened. It was a sad day because he knew he was going to change the state of America. The slave revolt was inspired due to the French Revolution. Haiti just won its freedom, so around that same time, the state of South Carolina was going to be overtaken by the strongest slave revolt that we have ever saw around that time. Vesey was captured and held by law enforcement. He was given a speedy and unfair trial. Sadly, around this time, he learned that he had support from white supporters who wanted to overthrow slavery. The state of South Carolina feared Vesey due to his persuasive and openness. They hung the enslavement who refused to give details on his actions. 6 of them were executed really quickly. Vesey's trial was long brought down. What is not told as specifically as history is that the 4 white supporters that he had Vesey in his pockets were also killed. South Carolina legacy put all over the papers and widespread fears. They wanted more white Americans to come to the town because these enslavement, these slaves, they did not think were that smart or unified, organized, and they were going to attack them. The slave revolt leaned to the slave laws and codes to be implemented. Slave codes were implemented in South Carolina due to Denmark Vesey's presence and what he was going to do to those communities. If this was not happen, it potentially could have ended slavery that second. He had over 15,000 warriors, people that wanted to go against the grain. They were so terrified of Vesey, they actually removed his other kin. His other child, Denmark Vesey Jr., stayed in South Carolina because he posed no threat. The others were deported, shipped off, executed, and isolated from where they once lived. Around October 7, 1882, the four white men that I mentioned earlier, known as William, John, Andrew, and Jacob, were killed, given jail time, banished from their abolitionist ways, told them they ever support any blacks, they will get the same treatment, if not worse, for their own people in their legacy. It is noted that as the times changed, they wanted to break the wheels, and that's when the slavery in America started to turn to more gruesome and horrific ways. Most people don't realize that the Negro Seaman Act required that free black sailors in Charleston be imprisoned in jail and no longer had the freedom at the ports they once had. Denmark Vesey changed what was going to happen because they feared another black man coming to change the state of history. Black codes, Negro enforcement, and no longer allowing them to colleague or collectively go with each other. Remember, around this time, even though they collectively go, the ideology of no groups of black people being together was no longer acceptable. Denmark Vesey single-handedly changed how this operation was run. Most people do not even realize that Denmark Vesey's arsenal in South Carolina put the fear and affected the rest of this country. Denmark Vesey, the icon, the leader, the influential, and the military strategist. Just think what would have happened if his plans would have went into fruition. Denmark Vesey, statue and national landmark are currently listed in the great state of South Carolina. He has commissioned a portrait and has multiple stories about him, even though they are controversial. Denmark Vesey, the icon, the leader, the soldier, the general, the leader of an inspiration, passed away sadly, July 2nd, 1822. This is the great story of Denmark Vesey. I hope you learned something. He is an icon up there with the great Nat Turner, whose slave rebellion actually happened. These historical figures should all be put into context on why we've seen gruesome attacks taken and why enslavement around this time, brutally as it once was, and how harsher codes began to happen. Once you learn that you can see from your past, you can know from your future where you are. But I think it's best that we talk about these things so we can always break down the historical context of them. Again, it's your boy King Crowder checking out. Smash the subscribe button. Hopefully you learned something. I'm going to check you next time. Peace.